Hello and welcome to the next review. Today we're reviewing Vampyr, 2018 game by Don't Nod Entertainment. In the game you play as Dr Jonathon Reid shortly after his return to England. Return, you may say? Where from, you may ask? Well, that would be the war in France. And his reason for returning is to see and potentially help cure his ill mother. Yet, shortly after his return, he is attacked and dies, and rises from the dead as a bloodthirsty zombie. Zombie? Vampire. It's in the name of the game. So, that is where the game begins, and everything said from now on may include spoilers. You have been warned! So the first thing we're going to talk about is the gameplay. Don't Nod Entertainment, as far as I'm aware, is mostly well known for Life is Strange. Brilliant game that I've never played but have seen playthroughs of, and it's phenomenal. And it's not a particularly combat heavy game, which explains some things here. Vampyr, very combat heavy game, and there are a few issues with that. For example, the dodge animation, phenomenal animation. However, sometimes it'll just go in a direction that you don't tell it to. The completely opposite direction you tell it to. Most of the time, this is when you are locked onto an enemy. However, not all the time. Sometimes you just go the wrong way. Unexplained. And as is seeable in my blind playthrough, link in the description below, it gets frustrating sometimes. Check out episode 13. Anyway, that's my main issue with the gameplay. But there's also NPC interaction. When you're talking to people, for example, when you are talking to Dorothy Crane, the nurse in Whitechapel. Well, as I found out, if you put the forget about this option, you'll know what I'm talking about when you get there. It's, spoilers, it is not a, yes, just forget about the things to blackmail this person. It's not a forget about stealing stuff and helping these people. No, it's a forget everything. Mind blank. It's not good. In fact, I would say it's bad. So the dialogue options are sometimes rather lacking in the fact that you think there'll be one thing and there's something else. That's a thing many games have. However, the fact this game autosaves and you cannot save games without going outside of the game into the game files, copying them, moving them elsewhere, continuing, and then if you want to go back, you copy them back, overwriting the other ones, / copying them out, putting them, and so on. It is punishing for no reason of your own, which is bad gameplay, if you ask me. But otherwise, they did a good job. The combat is very satisfying, as I predicted it would be. It reminds me of Bloodborne, not that I've played Bloodborne as much as I would like to. And yeah, moving on. Following gameplay, and there's one thing that I missed out, by the way, which I completely forgot to mention. The damage and health increase of non-player character enemies, or just enemies in general, is not a good way to increase difficulty. It's an artificial difficulty increase, and it was a terrible, terrible decision. Whoever made it. Anyway, we're moving on to the lore now. So, lore-wise, it seems to borrow a lot from Celtic, Anglo-Saxon mythology, because they have creatures such as the Myrddin, this guy, and also the Morrigan, this lady. So, you have that all going on, and personally, I think it's really, really cool. Like, no word of a lie, I love the lore in this game. And I compare almost all games that I play nowadays, or come out nowadays, to the Dark Souls series. Well, it's rare this happens, but lore-wise, this game lives up to the Dark Souls expectations. Yeah, it's that good. Because I've played through with, I don't know how long in the game now, but I've done a playthrough, and I've done, like, over half the game on the other 2 save slots. There's so much lore I haven't uncovered yet. So much. And I can't wait to. Whether it's through playing it again, going on wikis, etc. It's just... it's good. It's real good. But that's about all I have to say about the lore. It's managed to hold its own with my Dark Souls level expectations. But moving on! We've got the skill tree, which is sadly lacking for me. I can't remember exactly how many skills there are, but if we go through it quickly, there's 2 at the top, 2 next to it, 2 at the bottom, 3 and 3. That makes 10. Moving over to the other side, we've got a set of 2. I think we've got another set of 2. And then 2 more sets of 2. That's at least another 8. There's at least 18 skills to choose from. Is that enough? Hell no! Because, like, there are abilities in the game that enemies can do and you can't. And I don't mean this as in there are big boss moves that big bosses can do that you can't do. That would make perfect sense. No, what I mean is that there are moves that other types of vampires can do, and there's like no proper reason given why you can't. I've come to my own headcanon conclusion, which I'm now going to go on a small rant about. There'll be a timestamp on screen if you want to skip it. Basically, there's a whole poison breath and explosion section that you can't do. Well, personally, I think that the reason you can't do that is because you don't have the blood of hate so much in you. However, Muradin does say that if you didn't take the antidote beforehand, or if it was faulty, etc., then you would have not been able to defeat the Red Queen because the blood of hate would have overtaken you, which means you do have it in you, which means you should be able to do the poison stuff. There's not just Icor. Well, actually, it might just be Icors who do that. That's part of the zombie trees. If it is just Icors who do it, that makes sense. You're a guy, you can't be an Icor, and you're an Econ anyway. However, they never explain it, and that bugs me. Okay. If you skipped to here, you missed out on some major spoilers, but also some brilliant theorizing. So, once you've completed the game, come back, rewatch it. Yeah? Cool. Good. So, the skill tree. The skills are good, but not great. You have your standard damage skills. There's the Blood Lance, where you shoot blood from your arm and it goes pew, 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 through people. It does blood damage, which is a type of damage in the game. There are 4 types of damage in the game. Melee, ranged, blood, and shadow. You do that. Well, there's also others. There's chemical and, like, fire, I think. But that's not important, really. You'll learn that going through the game. Not important for a review. But you've got your blood spear. It's very effective. It's what I used in my playthrough all the way through. It hits multiple enemies in a straight line, and it does a reasonable amount of damage. There are certain enemy types that are resistant. There are certain enemy types that aren't. Just how it goes. There is the shadowy explosion thingy, which I used in my first non-playthrough character. It's very effective, does shadow damage. You put it at someone's feet or at your own feet if you're not targeting anyone, and then after a set amount of time it explodes, doing damage to everything in the area. Harder to hit with this one, because if you do it on someone and they're moving, then it will likely miss. If you do it on yourself and someone's moving and they move either not far enough or too far, it will likely miss. But if it does hit, it's very effective. And then there is the third one that I didn't really use, so I don't remember. Oh, it's the claws. Yes, you sharpen your fingernails into claws. It uses up a little bit of your blood, which I don't understand, and you rake at people. It's the fastest of the 3, most likely to hit, least effective, I would say, unless you just always miss with the shadowy explosion thing. Other than that, you have basic defensive abilities, one that holds people and one that works as a defensive barrier, making you immune to a certain amount of damage for a certain amount of time. Then you have your utility abilities, one that turns you invisible, and one that I never used. You have your ultimates, which I don't like the name of. I may do a oration about that one day, but not right now. Potentially a refront. Anyway, that's off topic. Ultimates. You have 3 again. The 3 ultimates are the Blood one, there is the Shadow one, and there's the other one. I only had one of them, it was the Shadow one. Effectively, you hold someone in place, and then they get lifted by a well of shadows and impaled, while it also pulls them down and breaks their back. Doesn't actually break their back, but it's pretty cool looking. The other 2, couldn't tell you, I'm not that far through in the other games, which brings me to other playthroughs, which brings me to my next point. You either have to grind really, really hard to get high level abilities, because you get next to no experience from killing people in combat, or you don't do that and you eat lots of people. You embrace them. Sorry. I'm not a vampire, I swear. Yes. You suck at their blood. And yeah, that puts the game on easier setting, and you get more powerful abilities, which is interesting. But it makes the whole skill tree prices seem too high, because if they made the game more difficult, I feel as though it only gets easier because you can level up the skills more. That's it. Which, again, artificial difficulty, bad. Then on the other side, you just have some basic upgrades. You have your bite upgrades. One does more damage with your bite, one heals more with your bite, one gives you more blood when you bite. Then that's part of the blood section. You can also get more blood total, because you use blood as a resource to use certain abilities. You also have your science section, and in the science section you have vials, which are effectively potions that you jab into yourself, Bloodborne style, and either heal your health, your stamina, which you use for basic attacks and dodges, and your blood. And the final section is just increases your base health and your base stamina. That's all. That's all the skills, and really, the ones on the left are way cooler than the ones on the right. It's just how it is. And the science ones are only useful if you can get the money / ingredients in order to make the vials, because consumables get consumed once you've consumed them, as it should be. But that's enough about that. Moving on once again, we have the moral quandary. It is it's a Don't Nod game, and that is definitely evident. Life is Strange was so big because of the butterfly effect and how it was showcased, all of the moral implications of all of your actions. It's all very important. However, this game has that too. To what extent, I'm not sure. But when I first embraced someone, it made me feel really guilty through certain music choices and how certain text choices and stuff. I don't want to ruin it for you, but it made me feel bad for doing it, as Dr. Jonathon Reid likely would feel bad after taking his Hippocratic Oath and all that. As such, it's good. The moral quandary is good. But again, as I mentioned earlier in the gameplay section, the choices you make aren't very clear when you're making them, which could be problematic. And obviously, because it is a game, you only have the set dialogue options available. Spoilers again, if you want to skip the major spoilers, as I did last time, I'll put another timestamp on screen. Yes. So, Dr. Edgar Swansea saves your life, really, by offering you a job at his hospital. Later on, you get the option to save his life. you can turn him into a vampire. I did that, and he turns into a massive dick. I didn't think that would happen. I thought it would be, he'll be the same man, but a vampire. Or, he may turn into a dick, because obviously the errors he made he didn't seem to feel responsible for, and I was like, oh no, is this a good idea? I don't know, but he's our progeny, we can keep an eye on him, it'll be fine. It wasn't. Ah! Anyway. Zen. Welcome back again. If you skipped it, you're missing out. Actually, you're not really on that one, just the last one. So, that's about all there is to talk about in the moral quandary section. They do a phenomenal job, even if sometimes you're not really getting what you think you're getting when you make choices. Which brings us to the final overview. What would I give this game out of 6 Pokeballs? Well, I'd give it a 4.8 out of 6. That's right, a 4.8 out of 6. That was close. I nearly did a completely wrong number there. I was all like, woo! Ha! Why would I give it this? Well, overall, the combat is very satisfying, even with the slight problems. The moral quandary alone is a reason enough to play it, because it's so deep. The exploration butterfly effect, which I'm not even sure is a thing in this game, but I feel like it is. Even if it's not, the fact I feel like it is, having played it, is something amazing. Then the storyline, the mythos, the lore, that alone is also good enough reason to play it. Even if you have problems with the others, just play the game. Please, it's great. Okay, I've calmed down a bit now. The game, whilst Don't Nod have certainly done well in making a heavily combat-based game, this may be the first one they've done, I'm unsure. The amount of combat in the game is great. The combat is usually very fulfilling, but sometimes feels a bit bullshit. Especially when mechanics get you killed as opposed to doing what they are supposed to do. The whole idea of the moral quandary proposed, of being a doctor but also a vampire. You have to kill to eat, but you promise to save lives. It's an oath you took, and all of your family think that yes, he's a good man, he's a doctor, he saves people, and then if you get bored or struggle too much, you'll probably embrace people, and then there are consequences for your actions. That is phenomenal. The whole lore and mythos. I don't know much about Celtic mythology. It's not exactly one of the big ones that gets thrown around in modern society, but it has been now, and that's amazing. I want to learn more about it. What I want a sequel immediately after finishing playing it. Literally, yesterday at time of recording this is the time that I finished playing this game. I put it down. It's like, I want another one. I want to see where this goes. Yes, certain elements of it will definitely change due to the ending of the game, and then they will have to also pick a canonical ending. But they're making a Life is Strange 2, and so they've got to pick a canonical ending for that, don't they? I'm sure they can do that for this as well. But I would recommend buying the game immediately if you're a fan of fiction, of deep stories, and of combat-y games, even if you may get a bit miffed every now and again. If you're not necessarily a fan of all three of these things, because it can be very challenging, or if you can't afford it, I'd recommend seeing if you can play it on someone else's console or computer first, or a game expo, anything like that. And then, if you can't afford it, save up if you think it's worth it after playing it for yourself. or if you can afford it but you're just not sure, because, you know, it could go either way for most people, try it before you buy it. But if you like fiction, if you like fantasy, if you like moral quandaries, and if you like lore, like me, buy the game. Until next time, happy hunting.